Let's get into your officiating brain. You are going to officiate North Carolina and NC State in Chapel Hill. You're given that assignment, and you know that Carolina absolutely tries to get to the line. That's part of their game plan. It's nothing new. And NC State, so far this season, is the worst at putting teams on the line. So when you know this going in, is your human brain already thinking about this?
Of course. Every single officiating crew on any level, even on the high school level, has what's called a pregame. They talk about the contest and the players and the coaches and the rivalry before they ever walk out on that court. You guys did a marvelous job with your Millbrook debut. I mean, people in our association are still, it's all they talk about when I go out.
Of course it is. Of course.
One of the things that I would like to invite you guys on is give me another evening. You don't have to officiate, but come to a real game and sit in on the pregame. We do really good officials. I'm not suggesting I'm a really good official. I would never pat myself on the back like that. But these officiating crews have conversations before they ever go out on the court. And sometimes it's perfunctory stuff that they talk about, but oftentimes they've been watching game tape. And they do on the NBA level as well. They know it's a rivalry game. They know what the atmosphere of the Dean Dome is going to be, or PNC. They know what's happened in the last few outings. They know the tendencies of the players and the coaches. All of this is known. The analogy that I make is, when was the last time you both were on an airplane?
2 weeks ago.
Yeah. The pilots, probably grizzled veterans, they had a pregame, right? Yeah. They knew how to get from A to B. So you do that to prepare yourself. So it was a really veteran crew. It was an accomplished crew in that game. And no doubt in my mind that they discussed those tendencies. And then you have to not only apply the rules, but there are things that we talked about when you did your stellar job at the Millbrook scrimmage. Have I mentioned people keep talking about it?
Steve, only in your circles, Steve. Only in your circles.
Steve Schwartz joining us here on the Easter Automotive Group Hotline. That's Joe Ovies. I'm Joe Giglio. All right.
That is the truth, by the way. It is only in my circles.
That's fine.
And you walk out understanding potentially what could happen. And then you have to apply not only your rules knowledge, but there's a concept that I think we talked about when you did that game called advantage, disadvantage. It's like, we'll talk about, we let players play through contact on the high school level. If you are tenured and if there's a little bit of contact on a shot and the basket goes in, you might pass on that if you don't disrupt the shooter, if you don't create that disadvantage. And I didn't watch the game live because I'm an NC State fan and my heart can't take it. So I watch the highlights on YouTube. And while I don't have the angles that those officials have, because I'm watching on a two-dimensional television screen, I have to believe they applied all of that and their knowledge of that matchup in the last several outings against what the teams were probably going to try to do to win the game.
When you miss a call, is there a tendency in your own head, or not, maybe not even miss a call, maybe you let them play on, but then the next time down, you call it, and maybe it goes against the other team here. Let's specifically talk about Terquavion Smith, because when he went to the basket, there weren't fouls called. When RJ Davis went to the basket, there were fouls called. And I'm just remembering from my little experience, but from your experience, when in your own head, if you say to yourself, I missed that one, there was contact there, I'm going to get the next one. Is that how it works?
Yeah, the biggest complaint about officiating is it's inconsistent. And it's not until you get out there and actually do it that you can see that. And that happens on occasion. We're taught on the high school level that if a player goes to the floor, the North Carolina High School Athletic Association wants us to call a foul. Or at the very least know how that player got to the floor. I think it's different on the collegiate level because you could easily call more fouls and then players get their 5 and they're done for the evening. And, people came to watch the players and you try as best you can to be consistent on both ends of the court. But there are times that you miss something. But our job is just to be as consistent as we can. But it's the number one comment from coaches is you're not being.
And do you keep track? Do you, in your either own head or look up at the scoreboard and see the foul count?
Yes.
that might influence one way or the other. No.
No,
because there was a sequence where it's 7-1, I think, and then all of a sudden on the same possession there was like 2 or 3 fouls called against Carolina that did seem like, it's 7-1. We gotta even this thing up here. We better clean. But I'm with you. I'm with you in terms of I would just let them play. I honestly think there was a directive this year from Brian Kersey to allow more game flow and more action this year.
Yeah. I can't speak to any of that. I'm not in that circle, so I don't know, and I'm not going to second guess the crew. I'm going to, obviously, as an official, I'm going to be supportive of officials. But when there's a disparity in the foul count, I want to say 2 things. And when there's a disparity in the foul count, we know it. If you've been around for a minute, there's a concept of roughing end line to end line, but sideline to sideline. You have to have all of that information. We tend to know how many fouls there are on each player. We keep track of that up here. We know what the team foul count is. But the team foul count is indicative of the kind of defense that the team is playing. It's 7-1, but coach says to me, hey, how come I've got 7 fouls and he's got 1? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, he's playing his own defense only in the front court and you're pressing full court. And that's why there's more contact. And we have to be able to have those conversations. So I've got to look at some things that you might not process. You guys would, of course, but the average person might not see that and be able to connect those dots to explain why there's a disparity.
Steve Schwartz joining us, longtime high school basketball official here on the OG. That's Joe Giglio. I'm Joe Ovies. If you missed any of this conversation, I highly recommend you go to the YouTube channel and you politely tap the subscribe button.
Was that so hard?
Leave some comments.
Did that compromise who you are as a person?
It doesn't sound like me, though. It doesn't sound like me, Steve. All right.
Joe Giglio, I want you to come up with a bunch of other ways in which people could interact with the button for him. He obviously needs help.
I've tried with lightly caress with him.
Make love to the subscribe button. Spoon the subscribe button. All right, so I went to both games on Saturday. I leave Cameron Indoor Stadium having watched combat under the basket, the very definition of letting them play. And I mean, I was entertained. I mean, it was a physical, hard game in a raucous environment at Cameron Indoor Stadium. And then I go to Chapel Hill where it was like, well, how are you supposed to play defense if you're just going to call this, right? So this is 2 different crews, 2 different basketball games. And I think that's where the fan frustration comes in. I can go to 2 games in a day and see completely different calls and how these things play out. Explain.
I can't explain it without having been there.
But this happens in high school. I'm sure you hear from parents too. Like you can call a game. You might call a game one way, and then they play another game with another crew, and it goes a completely different way. How does that happen?
That's a hard question. I don't know. I mean, we are asked to call a certain way by our supervisors. Mm-hmm. Every supervisor is different. I know officials who are in multiple conferences, and what's important to one supervisor might be less important to another supervisor. Some are let there be some contact so you can get a flow to the game, and some supervisors are contacts a foul and control the game and don't let the coach get out of hand. That's a great question for Brian Kersey. I mean, I'm not begging off. I don't officiate on that level, Joe. I can't speak to it. I don't see the memos. I'm not on the Zooms. There does need to be a consistency, but I don't know what his directive is.
But you get reports on this. Let's put it on your level when it comes to, who the director is, how they want things played out, and this is a bunch of different crews. So clearly you are getting a report after the fact about how things played out that's in comparison to the other crews that are in your circle, do you not?
That's correct. Okay. Yes. And there are everything comes from Chapel Hill. Cecil Mock is the supervisor of officials for the North Carolina High School Athletic Association. My local regional supervisor is a great human being by the name of Greg Fogelman, and we are forever talking about with all of the officials in our association, the Triangle Basketball Officials Association. By the way, we're looking for referees. Please go to refthetriangle.com. That's refthetriangle.com for more information. We just got a raise. At least on the high school level, we have people of all shapes and sizes and experience levels. So I was at Fuquay-Varina High School last Tuesday, and a member of the crew is a 21-year-old UNC student. Kid's going to be a killer referee with skill level at the age of 21. And I'll call Wednesday night at the high school where I'm assigned, and I have there's 100 years of experience. On our level, the job is just to get everyone consistent, and the training continues through the year of looking at video and having conversation. I probably would assume that the ACC does that regularly. It's reviewing film and talking with all of its officials about why that got out of hand, but why the foul count got out of hand here, but not there.
Steve Schwartz, longtime North Carolina high school basketball official. We appreciate the time, Steve. We'll take your directive. I don't know if that's a consultation, but I don't know. Maybe we'll get you a beer or a pizza for all the ways we'll talk about subscribing to YouTube.
That would be the greatest honor you've given me in all the time I've known you. It really would be.
Okay. All right, Steve. We'll talk to you later, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.